Hello class, this is Mr. Sims. We are on page 15 of our student books where it says day 4, but we're going to scribble out day 4 and call it day 3. And it's going to be more work with the distributive property. So let's start with our lesson objective. And our lesson objective is broken down into two skills. I can write an equivalent expression. But you know what? I'm already going to have you're going to already have written this down by the time we started. So let's just get to the point of what we're doing for today. And in example number 1, we're going to talk about what happens when we distribute a negative number. And really what it's going to come down to is what happens when you multiply by a negative. So I'm going to write this in here. Multiply by a negative. All right, so let's look at two scenarios. Let's say you take a negative number and you multiply that times a positive number. Well, a negative times a positive equals a negative. If you take a negative number and you multiply that times a negative, reviewing our rules for multiplying we get a positive. So what happens is this sign in both cases changes. Change the sign. So that's really what's going to happen when we distribute a negative. So we're going to show you, I got an example. I'm going to model 4 problems for you. Then there'll be an exercise that as a checkpoint, you'll check in. And then there's going to be another example and then some more exercises to complete the work for number 1 here. So write the following expressions in standard form by using the distributive property. So we're going to look at this first one on the left here. And notice how there's now a negative number in front of the 2. So we're going to distribute the negative 2. Okay? So we'll do this one horizontally. So we're going to take negative. Now I'm going to write this out just so you can see what's going on. Negative 2 times 4x, then a negative 2 times a positive 5. And yes, that plus sign does go with the 5. So now, if we follow orders of operations, we're going to multiply negative 2 times 4. A negative times a positive is a negative 8x. And here, we've got a negative 2 times a positive 5 again. Negative times a positive is a negative 10. Right. Notice how it was a plus, then it became a minus. And it's because of the distributing a negative. But let's look at another one. So let's look at the one on the right. Now we're distributing a negative 6. Zoom in just a bit for you guys. So now we're going to distribute a negative 6. So this is negative 6 times 5a and negative 6 times negative 10. Negative 6 times positive 5 is negative 30. And negative 6 times negative 10 becomes, oh, put the a, forgot about that. Yes, the variable just goes along for the ride. And this becomes a positive 60. Right. I tend to do a lot of different examples so you can see all the different scenarios that could play out. So now this one we're going to distribute to negative 7. All right. Now, it's not necessary to always, those of you that struggle, I would suggest writing this out. But for those of you that you might get it pretty quickly, we don't always have to write this out. So here's what we got. Negative 7 times negative 3b. Negative 7 times negative 3, positive 21b. Negative 7, and that is a negative 8. So a negative times a negative is a positive. 7 times 8 is 56. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to put the plus sign in front. All right, and then this third one, I'm actually going to show you, because, we've talked about how algebra is done horizontally, but what might happen is you may have to do a little, I want to show you how we can do this vertically like you would do a regular multiplication problem. So when you typically multiply, you would do it vertically. So let me just show you this. I've showed you how to do this with addition and subtraction, but And this is for some of you that may prefer to do it this way. If you like doing it the way these other three were done, that's fine, but this is just another way to take a look at it. All right. I'm going to do this in the manner that you've always done multiplication. So I'm going to go negative 5 times positive. Negative times a positive is a negative 25. Variable just goes along for the ride. So I'm going to do negative 5 times negative 4. Negative times a negative is a positive. 5 times 4 is 20. B just goes along for the ride. Then I'm going to do negative 5 times 3. So negative, and that's a positive, equals a negative. 5 times 3 is 15, and the A just comes along for the ride. So this is just another way to do the same problem, but if you are good with doing this, then everything's good. All right, at this point, you're going to pause so you can take a look at the first checkpoint, and then once you've checked in, then you can move on to the next part of this video. All right. So for example number 2, I didn't have an example for number 2, so what I did is I flipped to the back of page 15. So here's, barely see it, page 15 if the focus comes in. And we're on the back. And I'm going to write a problem down because now we're going to do example number 2. And it's going to be simplifying. And I'm going to write an example down. Okay. So it's just like, so we have negative 4, 2x minus 5, plus 15. Okay. When we simplify, first step is to distribute. Second step is to combine. So we're going to distribute and we're going to combine. So first things first, and we always distribute because distribute is multiplying. Combining is addition and subtraction, and it follows the order of operations. So let's start with distributing. We're going to distribute the negative 4. Take a negative 4. Remember what happens when we distribute a negative. So we have a negative times a positive, negative 8x. And then negative times a negative is a positive 20 plus 15. Okay? So once you distribute, then you put together what you can put together. Well, there's no other x's, so the only thing I can put together are these, are the numbers. So I get negative 8x plus 35. Remember, simplifying is distribute, then combine. And we have to distribute before we combine. All right, and then I wanted to show you one more. And here we're going to do a negative 3, 5a plus 6 minus a plus 1. And, hit pause if you need to copy this down. So from here, we hit negative 3. We're going to distribute a negative 3. So this becomes a negative 15a, and this becomes a negative 18. Over here, you might get confused as to what gets distributed. So we can put a negative 1 here, and we'll distribute the negative 1. And when we distribute a negative 1, we get a negative a, and a negative 1, negative times a positive is a negative a. Like so. Once we've distributed, now we can combine, right? So what I like to do is, why not, I can put the a's together, so why not put the negative a underneath the negative 15a, and let's put the negative 1 underneath the negative 18, and let's do this vertically, the way that you've always done math. So I'm going to go negative 18, and a minus 1 is negative 19. Okay? And a negative 15 minus 1 is negative 16. So negative 16a minus 19. All right, so this concludes video number 1. You have another checkpoint that you'll check in before you can move on in our lesson. But here's exercise 2 on page 16. So this is Mr. Sims signing off.